Welcome to another episode of Mastering Cybersecurity, developed by baremetalcyber.com. Let's dive in. Insider threats are risks that come from people who already have legitimate access, which includes employees, contractors, and trusted partners who can touch systems or information. An insider can be malicious, acting with intent to steal or sabotage, such as a salesperson copying the customer file before resigning for a competitor. An insider can be negligent, making a harmful mistake, such as a help desk agent emailing a spreadsheet of passwords to a personal account for convenience. An insider can be compromised, where an attacker uses a valid account after phishing or coercion so the activity looks normal on the surface. The shared feature across these categories is authorized access misused in ways that harm confidentiality, integrity, or availability. The starting point for beginners is understanding the categories and seeing how ordinary work patterns can mask extraordinary risk. Insider threats differ from external attacks because the actor starts inside the castle, which makes moats and walls far less useful by themselves. A firewall cannot distinguish between a legitimate report export and a disguised data theft when both flow from the same laptop and account. Endpoint antivirus may allow a signed corporate tool that is then abused to copy files or run privileged actions without obvious malware signatures. Multi-factor authentication reduces account takeover risk, yet it does not limit a determined employee who already passed authentication and authorization successfully. Traditional security models assumed the untrusted world lived outside and the trusted world lived inside, which breaks down when trust can be misused. Modern programs adapt by validating actions continuously and inspecting data movement, not just blocking unknown outsiders at the perimeter. A durable insider risk program balances people, process, and technology because no single pillar is sufficient on its own. People controls build awareness, set expectations, and create confidential paths to raise concerns early before harm accumulates quietly. Process controls define who can approve what, how high-risk actions get reviewed, and how quickly access is adjusted when roles change across the organization. Technology controls log and alert on unusual access, restrict data flows, and make theft harder by default even when someone has credentials. These pillars reinforce each other by reducing opportunity, raising the chance of detection, and shrinking the blast radius if something slips through controls. The goal is not suspicion of everyone, but structured trust that can be verified and corrected without drama. Every program needs a clear insider risk policy written in plain language that people can understand and follow consistently. The policy should state acceptable use of devices and accounts, including limits on personal cloud storage, personal email forwarding, removable media, and unsanctioned tools. It should set expectations for data handling, naming what counts as sensitive, where it can live, how it should be shared, and how long it should be kept. The policy should explain least privilege plainly by saying people receive only the access they need for their job, reviewed regularly, and reduced when duties change. Reporting channels must include confidential options, non-retaliation language, and examples of early warning signs worth raising without fear. Consequences should be fair, consistent, and documented, with management accountable for following the same rules they expect from everyone else. Monitoring and detection convert guesswork into observable signals that something unusual is happening before damage becomes irreversible. Data loss prevention, DLP, watches content and context to flag sensitive information leaving approved locations or channels, which helps spot unhealthy transfers or accidental disclosures. Security Information and Event Management, SIEM, aggregates logs across systems to correlate patterns, surface anomalies, and create timelines that analysts can actually work with under pressure. User and Entity Behavior Analytics, UEBA, builds baselines for normal activity and calls out deviations, such as off-hours downloads, sudden access to new repositories, or impossible travel patterns between logins. The most valuable alerts are tuned to real business workflows because false positives erode trust and drive people to ignore important signals that actually matter. Healthy detection programs pair thresholds with context, so investigations start with a strong hypothesis anchored in evidence. Protecting sensitive data at the source reduces what an insider can grab or reuse, even if access is temporarily broad or misapplied. Classification and labeling identify which information is public, internal, confidential, or restricted, which sets the rules of the road for storage and sharing automatically. Encryption at rest and in transit keeps files and messages unreadable without keys, so a copy database is not immediately useful when carried outside authorized systems. Data minimization shrinks risk by collecting only what is needed, retaining it only as long as necessary, and deleting it confidently when obligations end. Strong key handling and audited access to decryption functions ensure that extra copies or shadow archives cannot quietly bypass protections. These measures create friction for misuse while keeping ordinary work efficient, which is the balance programs need to sustain over time. Onboarding and offboarding are decisive moments for insider risk because access expands quickly and should contract just as quickly when roles change. Background screening calibrated to the role sets a baseline of trust while respecting local laws and fairness standards enforced by human resources and legal teams. Job-aligned training teaches the exact data handling rules and systems a person will use rather than abstract lessons that rarely change behavior at the keyboard. Just-in-time elevation grants privileged rights only when needed and for limited periods, which reduces standing power that can be abused or stolen silently. Fast revocation on departure must cover accounts, tokens, badges, and third-party tools, including remote wipe from managed devices and removal from shared groups. Clean device handback with checklist verification ensures no data or credentials travel away accidentally, which closes a common and very preventable escape route. Legal, privacy, and ethics considerations keep well-intended controls from becoming harmful or unlawful, which protects both people and the organization equally. Monitoring should be transparent and proportional, with clear notices about what is collected, why it is collected, how it is used, and how long it is retained. Consent mechanisms and regional requirements must be honored, with human resources and legal partners reviewing changes before deployment rather than after controversy starts. Programs must avoid discriminatory targeting by focusing on behaviors and access risks, not demographic traits or protected characteristics that have no bearing on security outcomes. Audit trails for monitoring tools should be reviewed themselves, which ensures power is not abused and that oversight exists beyond the technical team alone. Ethical restraint, combined with clarity, sustains trust while still enabling robust detection and response when warning signs appear. A simple response playbook turns nervous moments into organized steps that preserve facts and limit harm while emotions are running high. Triage begins with verifying the signal, stabilizing systems, and identifying involved accounts or devices without tipping off potentially malicious insiders prematurely. Evidence preservation follows by collecting logs, snapshots, and copies using repeatable procedures that maintain chain of custody for later reviews or legal needs. Containment actions should remove access, rotate credentials, and isolate systems in a way that avoids data destruction or retaliation, while communication stays need-to-know and factual. Investigation proceeds with interviews and timeline reconstruction, seeking causes and contributing factors rather than only blaming individuals, which supports fair outcomes and better prevention. A lessons learned review then updates policies, controls, and training so the program actually improves because of what was discovered under pressure. Insider risk remains manageable when signals, controls, and culture work together deliberately rather than in isolated pockets that do not talk much. Start by defining sensitive data clearly, mapping where it lives today, and setting practical rules for handling that show up at the exact point of use. Align access to roles with reviews that genuinely remove old permissions, reinforce least privilege, and apply SOD and PAM protections around powerful actions and accounts. Tune detection to business rhythms with DLP, SIEM, and UEBA, keeping alerts meaningful by anchoring them in how teams actually work every week. Practice onboarding and offboarding checklists until they are boring, because boring, repeatable routines quietly close many of the doors insiders would otherwise find open. A balanced approach to insider threats pairs structured trust with verifiable controls and humane judgment anchored in facts rather than fear. The core ideas are plain to remember and strong when combined, starting with clear data handling, right-sized access, and tuned monitoring that respects privacy while catching real issues. Early reporting and calm investigation create space for coaching and fairness, which helps people correct mistakes and discourages quiet abuse. Small improvements to reviews, approvals, and alert quality accumulate into real protection, which steadily reduces opportunity and impact across normal work. Programs that keep trust and accountability in view together tend to last because people can see how the system protects both their jobs and the organization. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.